All right, so 6:30, I'll call the meeting to order. And on our schedule, we had to do the walkthrough to see the finished project, or product of some of the summer projects. And I think Mr. Hood is going to lead us on that. So we will just go on that little venture.
It's like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Hey. Okay. I'm sure everybody's seen the trees outside. It's time to get dark if you want to.
Back on? All right.
We're live.
We are live. So 6:53, I'll call the meeting back to order. Reconvene the meeting. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the regular minutes of August 22nd.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of August 22nd.
Thank you, Matt.
I'll second.
Thank you, Vance. Were there any corrections or revisions anyone saw that need to be made on there? I did not see any. None?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? Correspondence. Judy, do you have any
I didn't have any,
correspondence? Okay.
not, unless it was the New Hampshire School Boards Association, which I summarized and put in here, but I believe everyone got one anyway. I'm not
Yeah.
certain, okay.
Yeah, and I did not receive any last meeting. So we'll move on to reports. Business Administrator report. Debbie?
There's a lot of manifests going around that need more signatures. I also have tonight, and I can pass this around now or have you sign it afterwards, it's the end-of-year financial reports that go to the state, the DOE 25 that goes to the Department of Ed, and the MS 25 which goes to the Department of Revenue. I've already sent in the electronic, but they need a cover page signed. So we need that signed tonight, and next week the auditors are here, and in the next board packet, I'll put in the year-end report after the audit and all that, so, from last year.
Okay. Thank you. Superintendent's report. Judy?
Yes, there was some, I will be passing out to you some newer summaries. At the superintendent's meeting last Friday, the New Hampshire School Boards Association passed out summaries of the bills. Again, I know you did receive one copy of the summary, but what happened, what they did with this one was the association had written the effective date of when these laws were going into effect, and it gives it a legal and practical practice impact on each of them. So it was really interesting and gave more detail to each one. So there's quite a few there. If you have any questions, you can certainly circle them or call, and we'll be able to go over that with you. But like I had said to the policy committee that, although we're going through the policies now, we will be getting an interruption of our policy process as soon as the association has all of the policies written that need to be written based on the new law. New laws. Yeah. I also have a copy of the ed funding presentation that was presented in Berlin last week, and I think it was last Thursday evening. They will also be presenting September 25th in Haverhill. Not sure of the time yet. I will be finding that out tomorrow. We will be talking about the state education funding on the next agenda, so if you want to bring those with you, those are the slides that they gave. We can explain some of those slides and how it affects everyone. Let's see here. Stuart Anderson has just reviewed with the administration the update on the vestibules. He will be presenting to the Emergency Safety Committee in the beginning of October. I have late September, but we couldn't get the date, so we had to move it back a bit. So October. And then October 10th, Stuart will be coming and presenting to the board, and we'll be updating the board on the vestibules as well as the science room. Now, and he'll be able to explain the timelines and what we're going to need to go by to make sure everything is in compliance. Johnson, I need the help from the facilities committee. Johnson Control came in last week and reviewed with the administration the proposals. They will be available on the 19th, which is, which is next Wednesday, to talk with the facilities committee and go over what they came up with for results based on all of the procedures they had completed. And then they will be able to meet with the board on September 26th, which is your next board meeting.
What time do they want to try to meet?
I don't know, I said I'd talk to you guys to find out what would be a convenient time.
And this is just our, developing our requests for proposals?
For the Johnson Controls?
Yeah.
They're just gonna review what types of approaches, with the performance contract and what would be the other options,
Yeah.
if not a performance contract.
Okay.
So they're gonna explain that and the reasons behind them at to the facilities.
Should we be concerned about the timeline at this point? Like, I remember, I was looking back at notes, and I thought that we had anticipated having the RFPs already out.
Well,
Are we behind, or?
No, he did state, we did ask that question at the last
Okay.
meeting, and he did state that as soon as the board decides, which would be at the 26th,
Okay,
he said that the process is very quick for them, as far as they go. So we're still within the timeline.
so can I make a suggestion on the 26th? Instead of having, sometimes we have people from the outside come in and present to the facilities committee and then give the same presentation to the board.
Mhm.
Should we just have it part of the board meeting? I mean, it's,
That's up to the board. I just didn't know how the board felt about that.
I don't know how you guys feel about it. I feel like
That's fine with me.
Yeah, 'cause I feel like it's kind of not a
Wasting
great
their
use of their
time.
time to come and tell us and then have to tell everybody else right afterwards.
Yeah, what's the point of that?
I don't know.
What's the point of our, I mean, I'm just saying, what's the point of like them coming in again? Is it for us to make a decision about what type of request for proposals to put out?
Well, they're gonna give the proposals that they have, they would recommend, because again, they're looking at proposals that are gonna save money,
Yeah.
so that they can use those monies. So they're gonna come with that proposal, and then I said, if, you know, I don't want I didn't want them to come in with just one proposal. I said, so come in with an option, and then, you know, your board can ask questions. For him to come in and explain everything, I think would be good, because then the board can ask him direct questions, you'll get your answers right away.
And we'll have access to these on the 19th, you said? Is that
We
what?
certainly can on the 19th, so I can.
So as a board, we can have access to whatever the proposals are, so that we have a week to review it, so that when he comes here, we can be prepared with any questions or concerns or anything we need clarified. So it's a, you know, I mean, that's what I would, this is a pretty big deal.
I guess I'm confused as to where we are in this process, because the last I thought was that we were thinking about putting out a request for proposals, of which one of the contractors that was gonna submit a proposal was gonna be Johnson Controls, but they were opening up
Yeah.
basically
Right.
to
Which
look
we-
at the whole,
right.
the whole building, both buildings, to see where we can save money and upgrade. But it sounds like that now we're just hearing from Johnson Controls, they're gonna come in and tell us what their proposals are. And I guess the question is like, where is everyone else, where are these other businesses or other potential contractors come in to the picture at that point?
And that could happen. I'm just saying that they're willing to come in and give the different, you know, savings, cost savings that can happen, and what does the board want to,
Oh,
You
so
know what I mean?
that
Before you
helps
go
me,
out.
because I thought they were coming in, I thought they were helping us develop
I
what the
thought so
RFP
too.
was gonna look like, and then, and the 19th, we're gonna look at the RFPs as almost like a scope of work that we're gonna send out to everybody.
Right.
But this is just their response to what they think our needs are.
correct.
Okay.
And the savings that, the level of savings that is possible.
Right.
But if we are happy with one of the options they present, we can't act on it.
We have to
until-
go out.
Yeah,
We have,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I thought,
Can.
Well, I don't think it's that we can, I think we have to.
Right,
Yeah,
you know.
But I thought we were already doing that.
And he knows, he's aware of that.
Okay.
So, I guess I'm back to what's the point of that meeting? I mean, if we're gonna have to sit down and ask questions of anybody that comes in with a proposal, or the facilities committee, whoever's gonna be responsible for that. There's gonna have to be a meeting where we're saying, okay, we have these 3 proposals, we have some questions for everybody, can everyone come to this particular meeting and answer these questions? I mean, is there a reason why they're sort of coming in advance of even putting out this stuff to,
Well, there's a certain
bid.
amount of money that needs to be available in your savings of what you have, so cost savings. So with all the projects that are being reviewed and looked at, they're going to determine, is there going to be enough money to say, let's say this is $1 million project with all of these projects. Are you going to be able to save that much money over a 20-year period?
right?
So that that this process, this performance contract will work. And so he's getting the exact numbers now, and he will present, and I suggested presenting to the board, so that if there are any questions then would it be worth it for the board to say, yes, we want to go out, are we gonna have $1 million? If you don't have $1 million worth of savings, how much money can the district put towards that? You know?
What do you mean by, do we want to go out?
to the,
Would, about, I don't know.
You
what
just said we're gonna decide if we want to go out.
Well, you have to, when he presents, then if he comes in with, okay, you have $1 million that you can save, okay, let's get this thing going and we'll be able to do it. The board has to make a formal vote on that. So if he comes in and says, gee, you're only gonna have $750,000 worth of savings, you have to come up with $250,000.
Does it,
That's a board decision.
Right.
does what he presents saying he can save us with just that hypothetical number of $1 million, if we decide that we're gonna move forward, does that set the precedence for the scope of work that other people now are gonna try to match on $1 million?
Yeah.
Well, then
Does
you
that
have to
sound
send
crazy?
out,
No, it does.
It does sound crazy?
No, what you say does make sense.
So like whatever they do kind of sets the scope of work that then we put out to
it's just
bid,
giving you an idea of what,
the project.
right,
Will
what the
entail.
project could look like.
But now, could somebody come back, I guess potentially, right, and say, we'll use that information, I'm guessing, as the scope that we need to do, and then someone else could come back and say, I can get you 1.2?
Yeah,
yeah.
each one would have to do their own audit.
Right.
Okay,
They
so
all
some might
start
just
with-
go,
yeah.
There's all of them
Doesn't even
have a
gonna work.
cost of doing their own audit,
Mhm.
because they're not gonna stick their necks out to say that this is gonna pay back, because they're the ones paying the upfront capital without doing what he called an investment grade audit. So each company that comes in to bid on this
and then
performance contract has got to do their own audit.
what was the meeting on the 19th then for? Is that just to go over it with
That was
facilities?
just to go over it, so if you want, I can ask
I
him to
mean-
not bother to have a meeting, and then I could just give the information to the board then.
In terms of, like, even if he could just give us the information, I know Van said he wouldn't be able to make it, that, I can't because
Well,
of
we
the
have the-
Highland Games stuff.
We have open house as well,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I'm like,
Yeah, that's
I have
fine.
meetings all that day.
but if we could have access to the
Absolutely, that's a
paperwork
good
so that we
idea. I
can
wrote that down.
be prepared.
It seems strange to me, though, that we're letting
Yeah,
a
this is a
potential
whole different
competitor
process that I thought we were.
to dictate what the scope of work is, and then we put that scope of work out to bid, which is sort of like,
It's like we're going backwards.
this company has basically said, this is what we think should be done, and this is where you can save, and this is where our company can give you the best savings. And then everyone else sort of has to, like, see if they can do the same or better. I thought what we were doing was essentially saying, putting out there, like, we are interested in energy upgrades of any type that you think is a financially viable option for us, and basically putting that out to everybody.
And that will go out.
But,
Um,
so I guess I'm not sure what the purpose of this is, because, number one, they don't know we haven't put out a request for proposals, right? So, I mean, I think they can come in and say, here's some ideas for what may be plausible, but like, as far as looking, it seems like we're putting the cart before the horse. We're taking their proposal, and then we're building our request for proposals from that.
Well, I think, Jay,
Yeah.
like, they do have a lot of information.
Sure.
Like, from last year and so on, because they have met with us, and like, we had, so about this time last year, we talked about windows and heating with, you know, pellets and all that, and I think we kind of put the brakes on at that point, because all the projects about this time last year, we started talking about, all kind of seemed to make sense, that they're, like, we're gonna spend $100,000 on windows, but we didn't insulate the roof. So is the window gonna work? And that, I think, kind of spearheaded this conversation, and we built kind of, and get me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where we kind of came up with like, well, if we're gonna do the heating system, and we're gonna do the roof over, and we're gonna put windows in, it's starting to look like the building envelope, and maybe we should bring somebody in to look at the entire envelope. And that's kind of how the whole conversation originally started. So the information I think that they had, that they're working with, comes directly from previous conversations. You know, and I understand what you're saying is now we've kind of given them that, and they're coming up with an idea. But all of the components were previously discussed
Yeah,
going back.
I mean, I think it makes sense to approach it all as one big project, but it seems to me that we're sort of handed this off to Johnson Controls to determine what we should do, and then we're gonna ask other companies to compete with what Johnson Controls thinks that they can competitively do. And it just
But they
seems
can
like
come in
that's,
with different ideas or different approaches to it.
so,
They did, but
Sure,
Johnson
but
Controls
why
has
is
a
Johnson
head start.
Controls
They have a
here?
head start. They already did their audit, they have a
yeah,
head start.
why
No
are
one
they
else has
here
been in.
now presenting to us when other companies don't even know that we're asking for proposals at this point?
Right,
And,
yeah.
and it's, I mean, besides the fact that that's not necessarily fair to these companies, which I don't necessarily care about, but I'm just saying that it seems like we're sort of ceding control of the project to Johnson Controls before we even get started with what we want to do. I mean, doesn't it make sense to identify what we're looking for and let a range of companies give us proposals before we identify one company and let them sort of dictate what our request for proposals is going to be?
What's the timeline?
I mean, you could certainly do that. You could have them, wait for them to
But-
present their proposal at a later time after we get the RFP.
But they, part of this was that they were gonna help us
That's what I
to
thought.
put together what the proposal should look like.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm assuming at this point is they've still done that part, but they've already gone ahead and done
Right.
their audit before we put those proposals out.
They
So
did
somebody
that
else could,
last year.
yeah, so somebody else could come in, you know, and say, sure, we got the request for proposal. They might come in with a solar option that isn't included in what Johnson Controls, or something. It could look a whole bunch of different ways. But I know what you mean. It seems, you know, they've already done a lot of work beforehand. We have to go out and take other
Right.
requests for, I mean, we have to put that out,
So
so.
what's the timeline?
By the March meeting, we need to have a solution.
Okay.
Right.
Like, we have to have a full solution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're back another year, which,
So is it a reasonable expectation that after this Johnson Controls meeting that we have, that we will have a firm idea about what the request for proposals is gonna be, so that we can put that out? I mean, I understand that
must
the
already have
timeline's
that.
gonna be turned around.
You guys must already have that, because that's what must be what they've built off
they're
whatever they're gonna
based on,
present to us.
yeah.
It's just
Well,
kind of back,
But I thought we were gonna see that.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
no,
we
I know
talked
what you
about, like,
mean.
when you guys had an idea about the request for proposals, that we would be able to look at that so that we could see
Right,
what we're asking people to do. And then, because I know there's a billion different things that can be done,
Yeah, yeah.
so.
yeah.
I just feel like this isn't the type of thing that I think that we should be rushing to make a decision on. I felt like there's some other big decisions that we've had to make that were made in that way, and I wasn't really necessarily comfortable with that, although it seems to be working out all right at this point, but I'd like for it to not be one of those things where all of a sudden there's a board meeting and where we have to make a decision now, or else we're not gonna meet some deadline.
Right.
You know, I'd like for this to be a more, I guess, a more well thought out process. And it seems to me the first step should be to, like, identify what we're asking people to do and give other companies an opportunity at the same time to do the same thing that
On the
Johnson's
same
doing.
time frame. Yeah. I mean, we could hold whatever their proposal is and just put out the RFP that they respond, the RFP has been, that's what they must have used to put together their response to it, so could we just say, well, why don't
We
you
could
guys
just
hold
come-
off? We're
right.
putting the RFP out now and then we can see what everybody's proposals look like at the same time.
I mean, is that what happened? Did you guys give them an
We
RFP
don't
and
have a
then?
formal RFP out.
Okay,
Oh, we
so-
don't?
Because that's what I thought was,
He's
the
just
idea
has
was
come
like,
in to give us, to help us, with some of the projects,
Yeah.
looking at the audit that they did last year, and just has been helping us with the process. He knows, we told him we have to put this out.
yeah.
So we're gonna hear his solution without seeing the RFP. An RFP hasn't gone out. There's no formal RFP. I'm not saying there's
We have
anything
not
wrong
sent
with
it
that.
out.
I just thought,
No, we've not sent it out. I mean, we
Yeah.
have a draft.
A draft of an RFP.
and that's what I thought he was helping with at
Yeah.
first, and then that
Right.
we were gonna see that and then send it out, and that they could respond as well at the same time, or whatever.
Which we can still do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do we have
He
one-
just suggested this
We can
last
do
week,
that
so I
now.
think
That'll
it's
just
okay,
give
I'll
us
bring it to the
longer.
board and see if they want to do it this way.
Oh, I'm
Give us
sure he
longer
did.
to look at it.
I'm not saying, they've been very helpful. I mean, we have a much better understanding of everything because of them. But,
I mean, is it viable option to get one out soon?
Do we know, like, what, maybe this is a facilities thing, but like, what's the language that we're using? Are we talking about like, I mean, I thought the idea was that we weren't gonna be terribly specific about what we were looking for, other than we're
Right.
looking for performance upgrades that would sustain themselves. And whether that is in any form, and then ultimately we'd end up making the decision about what sort of budget neutral options, if they are available, we would choose, but like, basically, I thought the idea was to basically make it as general as possible, so that the companies could come through and make their own determinations of what's viable and what's not.
Okay, so it sounds like at the next board meeting, we'll come with the RFPs.
Or even next week.
Actually, next week. We'll send them out to the
send them
board.
out so that we
Then
can
Send
see
them
them,
out to the
yeah.
board.
And then we
Via
look
email.
at it for the next meeting.
Okay.
That's what, going back to my
Yeah,
original
okay.
question was, is I thought that we were gonna see,
Okay.
that's why I was asking, are we behind now because we haven't even sent the RFP out? And I thought that's what we were gonna get.
And it seems to me that if we're gonna be, this is a huge scope of work,
Yeah.
potentially, and that these companies are gonna need some time to come through and do what,
Yep.
the type of audit that Johnson's did, and then basically, that doesn't seem like it's the type of thing that's gonna be able to happen overnight. And the guys don't want it to be, if we have to make a decision by March, we're pushing,
Yeah,
Yeah, we
we're
gotta
gonna
get
get
this
on, you
out,
know.
we gotta get going,
right.
yeah.
Because that was part of my question before, was like, what's our timeline?
Yeah, yeah.
Have all RFPs in by the end of October, like what,
Yeah,
do we have kind of a
We have
general?
that sketched out already
Yeah.
in the RFP.
So we'll
Okay.
get that by email next week, great.
The negotiations committee I will have to speak with, because we are now, we have one day left to choose from. I have September 27th available in the evening, 4 o'clock.
Thursday?
Right.
That's a negative.
Did I miss, what is the negotiations committee? Did I miss?
I can do that.
We had a discussion while you were not here, because I think, well,
you're the chair.
and I was, yeah, you're the chair. And there was a question about whether you were going to be on it or not, Jasmine.
What is it?
It's-
If you'd like to, because I can't make it.
We're,
It's
we're,
negotiating.
Can't make it?
Contract
No, not on
negotiations with the
Thursday.
teachers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't mind, when is it? Thursday something?
the
4
27th.
o'clock.
I can make that.
Must be nice.
It's really just a set date.
Okay.
Okay,
You got placed on a lot of boards while you were gone, just so you know. They kind of keep popping up.
It's Karen,
So is it Karen, it would be Karen and Jasmine?
Okay.
and then are you an alternate?
So we'll
Where
keep
would
Brian
it
as
be?
the alternate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll come
At
when
the
I
SAU
can, I
report.
just,
Or somebody,
this
yeah.
doesn't work right now, so.
Yeah, understandable, okay.
You're the good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
might depend on the issue.
So you'll schedule that with their negotiations team?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, once I'll see if they can do the 27th, come to think of it, because they couldn't do some of the other days. We've been going back and forth the last couple of days,
Yeah.
So I'll check with them tomorrow and then get back to the negotiations team
Okay.
and the attorney. Okay, thank you. That's it. I included some upcoming trainings, if anyone is interested in going, if you are interested in, or attending. Some of them are webinars. And, well, yesterday's was was one in Concord. So if anybody wants to be part of the webinar, just let Fran know and we'll set it up. And that's it.
Okay. Judy? Principals report. Scott?
Thanks. We are currently setting up a couple of professional development opportunities for teachers in follow-up of our August in-service week. Ginny Doyle and myself are setting up trainings for CPI, for the nonviolent crisis intervention trainings that we're doing. We've gotten teacher volunteers who are interested in participating in that, so we're now, Ginny and I are gonna have to sit down and start putting together for dates to begin that. We also have teachers who are gonna be heading to it's a 2-day, one in the month of September and one in October, training from Cassie Ackley, which is kind of builds on some of the topics that she talked about during in-service. It's a 2-day commitment with an 8 to 4, I believe in Concord, that she is kind of an intensive deep dive into some of the topics that she's doing, a little bit more than just, she spent about I think it's 3 hours with us on that in-service week, so a little bit more in-depth with that. So we have teachers involved in both of those topics. Matt already mentioned this, but I'll mention it again. Our open house is on the 19th. There'll be an all-call going out probably either Friday or Monday. It does begin at 4:30. Mr. Marshall with the Cafe Services will be putting together, there'll be some food that'll be served. So if you have anybody who's going to be attending, just to make sure, let Brenda Vance know in the main office so she can get a count. But that'll be beginning at 4:30 for elementary up here, and it'll transition for the middle high schools to be later in the evening. We had on September 5th, we had a walkthrough with Mike Jocelyn from Jocelyn Sports Turf. He did a walkthrough with Mr. Hood, looking at the ball fields for both the softball and baseball fields, just to kind of give us an idea. His company is someone, they do some work with a number of schools in the North Country. A lot of times his kind of relationship is he comes in twice a year, once in fall, once in spring, just kind of a maintenance regularity. So he wanted kind of, at least this is just a starting point. I know we talked about this at the last meeting to kind of give us an idea of where, what that would look like, what it would take as far as some one-time costs, what it would look like potentially for maintenance stuff. I know as we come into the budget season coming in rather quickly, Mr. Hood was able to kind of talk with him and get some preliminary numbers so that we can kind of work with and work on and what that work would look like.
What's the name of his company again?
Jocelyn Sports Turf, JOSSEYLN.
Where they out of?
I believe that out of Bethlehem, I believe. Just a couple other upcoming things of note. We have homecoming is this Saturday.
Ooh.
We will be the traditional games against the Lisbon Panthers will be coming in. I believe their first game's at 10 o'clock. We have girls and boys middle school soccer, and then we have varsity girls and boys soccer right on a row. They'll be all at the right field in the back of the school, along with the other festivities of which are connected with that. Middle high school has a pep rally on Friday, starting at 2 o'clock. We're going to have some fun as we kick off the weekend. There's a rumor going around that I have to maybe participate, so I'm a little nervous about that.
Bring
Usually
back
the
the
principal during one of the homecoming games paraglides onto the field during halftime.
I'm thinking about doing like a Florida State Seminole kind of thing and running to midfield, like throwing an axe into like
Oh,
the
nice.
field.
Yeah.
I think that would go over really
Yeah,
well.
it
Don't hurt
would.
yourself.
Yeah, so I'm gonna see if people are okay with it. I figured it's better to just beg for forgiveness later
Yeah.
than ask for permission. And I'm gonna put a quick plug in for our Booster Club, who obviously does a lot of work for our athletics. They are looking for volunteers for the Highland Games, which are coming up. We have a lot of student volunteers for that as well, the weekend of September 22nd. So, and if you have any interest in volunteering that's a big fundraising event for them that supports our student athletes, you can contact Ms.
This is Debbie O'Connor, sitting to my right. That's all I have.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions? Moving on, committee reports. The school year's started, so other committees will start meeting. I think we've got a risk management one coming up soon. Maybe. I feel like I have it on my calendar. I don't know if any others, yeah, popped up on my calendar.
Sorry, right back. Thanks.
So have any other committees met, other than policy or facilities? I don't believe so.
No.
And then we have policy tonight?
We did.
Okay. Jay, you want to take
Yeah,
us through that?
we went through a bunch of all the D policies, a fairly good-sized stack,
Yeah.
which we made a few revisions, not a whole lot. A lot of this stuff is administrative, logistics, budgeting, monies, how things get spent, things like that. Nothing terribly interesting and nothing terribly different than, a lot of our policies are very closely aligned with the school board association recommendations, and so there's just a few modifications that we made, but that most of them were just because like we either didn't do or we were doing something slightly different. So I think those will be ready for first reading next meeting. And I think for second reading this meeting, we have the ones that we approved for first reading last meeting.
Yep.
So they're ready for a vote, yeah. And I think those were included in the packet.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve policies JI, JIC, IHBA, JIA, JICDD, JIR.
Thanks, Matt. Can I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Vance. Any further discussion or any corrections from there? I think we made our corrections at first reading. I think everything looks good now. Hearing none, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? Okay. I think that covers all our committees. Business requiring board action. Do you have any nominations,
I
recommendations?
have recommendations.
Okay.
For Jeanette Fecto, for the administrative assistant to the SAU. She will begin 9/17. And Brandy Tilton, part-time payroll accounting clerk, and she will begin on 9/24.
I didn't know you were leaving, Frank. Did we know that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we did? Yeah, I must have missed that meeting. Oh. Need a motion almost?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to approve Janet Fecto for the SAU admin assistant position and Brandy Tilton for the part-time payroll clerk.
I'll second.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Vance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, yes, that's all of your recommendations for tonight.
Yes, that's it.
New business.
I just have to go into non-public.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have anything for new business? I have one thing. I think it's new business. Maybe I'll be corrected that it's continuing business. I don't know if it happened in my absence when I was away for 4 weeks. I'm curious about the new schedule in the middle high school. If that came before the board at any point, if there was any discussion with the board on
Yeah, that will come at the next meeting. We usually try to wait until all movement of students, what we've done in the past is waited for all movement of students where they could drop or add a class to get the
Right,
numbers,
right.
and then we will move forward with the numbers for each of them.
Yeah, I think my specific question was, was that we've now added block scheduling back on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And I don't know, I don't have an opinion on this at the moment. I haven't had time to form an opinion, and now that the ball's rolling, our opinion doesn't really matter. But I think that's something that, you know, if we don't have a say in that, I'm perfectly fine with that. You know, we had a similar discussion last year about the change in the grading process. You know, last year, we were given a handbook and told, you need to vote and approve this handbook so it can go to print. We did that. The handbook showed up and it had a whole new grading procedure in it. And as board members, we didn't hear about it until out in the parking lot from parents. At the very least, if we don't have a seat at the table to, be asked about these decisions, these are fundamental changes to the educational process here. At the very least, I think we should be kept in the loop.
Yeah.
Instead of finding out from our children or opening up a handbook. So to your point about the schedule, that's definitely a request I was gonna make. I'd like to see, in our packet for next, not given to us at the meeting, but beforehand, so we can look at the master schedule. So people who don't have kids in the middle of high school, do you want to explain what Tuesdays and Wednesdays look like now?
I can do it now, or I can wait till next week, doesn't really matter to me.
Well,
It's up to you.
No, we just wait till we have it, I guess.
So
This is your question.
yeah, well,
there are several days that are block scheduling and then several that are period
Yeah.
standard.
I mean, it's a bigger, how much, I can definitely explain it. I have no problem doing that, but if you want a presentation on it, I can wait till the following week, the next time we meet, but I can be more than happy to answer the question now if you like.
yeah, I mean, at the very least, I think we should have the gist of
Sure,
what's
okay.
going on.
So what we went through a process of this past year where we had, we began with, beginning of the year, that one of the things that we came into is that the schedule kind of changed minutely every year. That was one of the things that came in at last, not this past summer, but the summer before. It's one of the tasks that was given to me as far as putting a bell schedule together. That changes year to year. One of the things that what I decided what I wanted to do was get input from the stakeholders that were within the building to be able to have that. So what we did is we began with having some conversations with our staff regarding what are the things they would look like, what are the things we work with our professional development committee, in the sense of what are some of the things that, in our team leaders, what are the things that you're looking at within a schedule, what our day-to-day would look like, with the idea being that it's not changing year to year, that the fact that we can use something that is consistent. So we had some input from the folks that were in those groups. We put out a survey to the entire teaching staff, 6 through 12. So you had 3 groups. You had your specialists, which go K through 12, and obviously affected by the elementary schedule as well. You went through the middle school teachers as well as high school teachers, so they each have their own vested point of view. That information was brought back as a whole. We then asked the question, what are some of the things that you're really looking for, and what are some of the things that you're willing to trade out? Because if you want something, you have to be willing to kind of give something. We then had some discussions where the team leaders went through and put through a process in which they were soliciting feedback as far as putting together a survey within the building for that. They then we constructed a preliminary idea, went out to those 3 different groups again, got feedback, and had a yes, no, what other input would be, and then we had putting another piece together and then put it forward in front of our teaching staff again. The idea being is that one of the things that we had some of our teaching staff was really looking for time within the weekend to be able to do have some of those longer periods of time in which you could use some of those lab work, whether it be lab work in science class, deeper dives into some of the work in English class, et cetera. So it is not, and I'm very careful about saying this, it's not block scheduling. Block scheduling implies that it's 90 minutes. Either the 2 different ways you have block scheduling is either have 4 90-minute classes, and it's either A and B, where they have 90 minutes. So you would have 4 classes on a Monday, different 4 on Tuesday, and you flip back and forth. Or you'd have it on a 4x4 block, where you have the same 4 classes every day of the week for a semester, and then you go off. This is not either one of those. There is some block time where it's extended, and I'm trying to get, I don't have a better word to describe that.
Kind of like a hybrid.
Yes.
Extended period.
Extended periods, and I'm have been, and will continue to be very specific about using the term block, for just that reason, because I don't want it to be something where it's not block scheduling. There is some extended time.
Each class has one extended period.
Exactly. So if your way your period looked like was what some schools refer to as like your 7-period day, some people refer to it as a waterfall. That with your 7-period day, your traditional 7-period day is on Monday, Thursday, and Friday. With Tuesday, your odd classes meet, 1, 3, 5, 7. And then on Wednesday, only your evening classes meet, 2, 4, 6. And then you have a focused learning time where all teachers are on deck and available that time for 90 minutes at the end of the day on Wednesday.
So each class meets 4 times a week.
4 times a week, but the amount of minutes between last year and this year has increased. So you have instead of 45 minutes last year, 5 days a week, you now have 3 sections of 48 minutes with 1 section of 90. So the overall minutes for the end of the year has increased, the instructional time has increased.
About 9 minutes.
Well, if you go out over the course of the year, a little bit more than that. 9 times, however many. You get about a couple days extra.
So you said, oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say, Judy was here, we went through this a lot, and I'm sure you've heard about it. So we've had some pretty in-depth conversations and analysis on the schedule in the school, and I personally have no issues with the hybrid schedule. My concern as a board member is that we're sitting here a month into school and no one knew. You know, I mean, I don't know why we weren't told that.
I mean, that was my point. And again, to echo Matt, I see the value in the hybrid. Like you said, especially when we've talked about this before, science classes where they can't get a lab done in 46 minutes, or now they're 48 minutes. And I think, from my standpoint, sitting here, looking at the master schedule when we do get it and see the numbers, and, there might be some gaping holes in people's days. I mean, I know right now, it's obviously I have a daughter in high school, and her Wednesday she has 2 classes. She has an hour-and-a-half study hall, and she has an hour-and-a-half of FLT, which is a study hall. It really is. So it's 3 hours of study hall. I think as we move on and the kids get a little more, familiar with this, maybe a month or 2 down the road, we should be surveying them. It's like, it's great that this is servicing the needs of the teachers, but we gotta think about the students as well. And, we're, like Matt said, we're 2.5 weeks into the school year, or whatever it is, and my daughter aside, I spend every afternoon with 19 teenagers, and I hear many different opinions about what their Tuesdays and Wednesdays look like. And from the back to the school board standpoint, looking at the master schedule, I do have concerns about what kind of gaps it might be creating. If somebody's got, let's say, a plan period 4, and then a study hall period 6, and now they're spending essentially 3 hours of their day without teaching. It's a big chunk, if the schedule falls that way. There's potential for that.
I mean, those are a lot of the concerns that we had when we had this conversation 4 or 5 years ago, when we transitioned from a traditional block
It's a little longer
schedule.
than that, because before I was on the board.
Yeah, well,
So
I've
6
been here
years
too long then. You agree, right, Pat? But I share some of those concerns. You guys can make the decision you want to make. I mean, it's your schedule, you know what I mean? But I think it would have been nice to at least have known that prior to tonight, because there's definitely some advantage to a schedule like that. There's also, there's some challenges in a school that's as small as ours, in some of the classrooms, having potentially 4 kids in a class for that long. And but it's your schedule. I'm hoping it works. And I just would have liked to know before we came back to school.
Yeah. Oh.
Can I request that we do have a small presentation on what exactly it looks like?
Sure.
And how it might work?
Yeah.
Sure.
And to that point, I alluded to last year when we talked about this new grading procedure, which, raised the threshold for passing grade. Again, maybe I'm confused or just ignorant to what the school board's role would be in decisions like that. We were told that, when that change happened and we questioned it, we would have a presentation last September. It's in my notes. And then it got pushed off. We needed one more time for the guidance counselor to come in and explain what the report card was gonna look like. And it got pushed off and it never happened. So, at some point, maybe we'd like to see that again. And that might raise a whole nother conversation about where we really are with competency-based education. And if we're still heading down that path, or we're going somewhere else. So if we could get that on a future board meeting for a presentation that we missed out on, that'd be great.
When is the first grading?
First weekend in November.
So maybe we could have the grading one before then, because there will probably be questions.
Yeah, and I think, as you guys know, there's a history through the years of frustrations, not just for us, but for parents, of what the report card looks like, what it looks like online, and what it looks like, is it gonna look different this year than it did last year when it comes to the standards, what's appearing on there. It'd be great for us to know that, instead of hitting everybody's hands, and then we're getting asked those questions all over town. Again, again, I'm not asking for us to be a bigger player in the decision-making of those decisions. That's on administration, as I said last year. It's just, it'd be nice to, be in the loop. Appreciate it. Anything else on that? No? On that? I just have one more comment to throw out, just as it regards to the schedule. So looking at the handbook and the schedule in there, so our school day for the high school is 7:15 to 2:30, right, according to the,
As far as when kids arrive, or as far as the academic
the
day?
bells, the bells.
There's a bell at 7:15, there's a bell at 7:20, there's a bell
As
at
far as beginning and end of day, 2:30.
7:40. For kids, it's 7:45, 7:50.
Okay.
There's bells in beforehand, like on signal
Right.
times, but it's not.
But the official
Yeah,
end,
they're not late.
The official end of the school day is
2:30.
2:30, right? Okay, so, and again, this is me speaking for myself. So then it'd be safe to assume that in accordance with the CBA, Monday through Thursday, the workday ends at 3.
Correct.
Okay. I'll leave it at that. Continuing business. So we have school board goals on here for the umpteenth time. And we have a full board here. I forget, what's that?
Let's vote.
What are we voting on?
Don't we have them?
Yeah,
Yeah,
did we
yeah,
decide
we-
to,
Yeah, we had our
We've
meeting.
agreed
Yeah.
on what they are, we
We
just
agreed
were
on
never,
what they are, yeah, so we went over them.
yeah,
yeah, we
made-
just were never together enough
I
to
think we
vote.
made minor changes with the,
Right.
with the
Plan
look
to-
forward
We didn't
to.
yeah,
Yeah.
overhaul,
We did
yeah.
not, because,
Okay.
We always had we've had 4 people basically.
right, right.
Okay.
The last 2 months.
Yeah, I think that's all we had left to do with actually, was just to officially vote on our school board goals. Because we had the meeting.
Yeah, and we worked on them over the
worked on
summer,
them.
we didn't have enough people where we felt comfortable voting on the school board goals. And I think we're all here tonight, so. I'll make a motion to approve the school board goals for school year 2018, 2019.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Vance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Yeah, Jay.
Okay. Good thing we waited to have you here.
Wow, I wasn't at
I
the
know.
meeting, and I don't know if I've seen them since that meeting, so.
They were in the packets a couple times.
It
Yeah,
was in the last one.
Was it?
yeah.
Yeah. All right, staff, Spa?
I have, sorry, I have
sorry.
one thing for continuing business.
Sorry.
I just know, over the course of the last year, we've had some conversations regarding our website and potentially going outside of the building to have somebody take a look, and maybe bring all the capabilities to the forefront. Have we looked into doing that and what the cost might be to do that?
Yeah, we did, well, not the cost, but we had, Mr. Adams was taking on that
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought somebody was doing
in the
it.
summer.
Well, Trey was, but he's got a ton of stuff to do, and I think we need a
Yeah.
website person.
Definitely do.
We don't need
It
a tech
is-
person, we need a website person. I think they did the best they could with it, and I'm appreciative of that to keep the cost down. But our
Squarespace,
website does not function.
What are we trying to achieve with the website?
a more
Functionability.
functioning, user-friendly,
Like something that,
up-to-date.
something that like is that like the students and staff, is there stuff on there that the students and parents and staff and should be able to, that
Yeah.
they're having a hard time?
Yeah,
It's not
Okay. It's-
user-friendly at all.
no, there's,
It
it's
is
a
not,
tremendous amount of click-throughs to get to certain
Yeah,
areas.
Yeah.
It gets confusing. I
Super
think the
outdated.
capabilities, it's pretty deep with capabilities. It'd be great. I know we talked about food service. It would be great to know, to have the kids' accounts hooked up, so the
That is
parents.
coming.
It is,
That
yeah.
is, that's to a whole nother program.
Okay.
And we're hoping to roll it out next week
Yep.
at open house. We're
Awesome.
having some technical issues.
Yeah.
Is that like pay online?
Pay online,
Yeah.
so, I
Jeez.
mean, definitely by October 1st, but
Yeah, yeah.
we have
Yeah.
We're just working on some of the technical issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think the
You still
system
to
we
click
have
through
in
the
place,
website to
yeah.
get there, but.
but you can see what your account balance is,
Yes,
you can put more
yeah,
money on,
yeah,
because,
you can pay online and you can see your kids.
I mean, Jack has to send home a little handwritten note all the time, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, you
Yeah.
know, it's,
It's funny.
Yeah.
you know, you owe me. So, it'd be great to, I'm glad to hear that, but I think, you know, you go to websites all the time, we all do it, we browse websites for different reasons, you go to other schools too. It would be nice, we talked about getting this money for this website, we fought for it for a couple of years, it kept getting pulled out. It would be nice that now that we have this in the web to school and all that sort of stuff, that we're using it, and it's functionable.
Absolutely, yeah, and Jay, just to give you some history, so we had this, you know, the old website forever, and there was a lot of information you could find on there, but it was kind of bland and kind of clunky, and so we moved into this new site that has a lot more power, a lot more capabilities, but it's not only missing some of the pieces our old website had, but like I said, it's not as intuitive right now as it could be, and there's a lot more capabilities to it.
Sure.
That we can help build it into something better in the future. We just need someone to,
One of the other
Rally.
things that kind of doesn't bother me, but it's kind of interesting is, you know, it's 2018, so everyone's got a smartphone. I think we should be able to have a user-friendly
Mobile.
capability
Yeah,
for a
mobile-
website on
mobile
our
page.
phones also.
Yep.
A lot of people no longer own computers. They do so much on their phone. So even though we have a new website, it still looks different on phone compared to desktop, and there's, what you can do with the phone, I think, is still limited. But if we're shooting out things that we'd like to see, I think that's one also.
I mean, is this something that we're gonna be asking for in the next budget? Is that the idea?
I think we were
It's
already
like a-
working on
We
it.
could take it out of the trust too, I mean, we've been talking about this for too long.
I'm just
to be
thinking
honest.
that, like, that can be a pretty, for an organization of this size and for all the capabilities that we're hoping to incorporate, that can be a pretty big outlay to have somebody develop like
Yeah.
a good website for you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's.
But we don't even know what that I mean, we at least have to start talking to those people, because we don't know what it costs. We've kept it in-house long enough, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not that anybody fell short, it's just, we
No,
can
they're
only go
doing
so far.
They're doing a great job.
Yeah.
They've got so many other.
Well, and they have other, you know, other skill sets.
Yep.
That was it.
okay, thank you. Anything else? Try again, this spot.
So from Polish Change, the school district playground is currently providing services to 6 special needs preschool students and 1 preschooler who is at risk. 3-year-olds attend twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and 4-year-olds attend 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Program runs 8 to 10 every day. Children receive the related services, speech language therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy during that time. In addition to related services, the schedule includes playtime, a morning meeting, snack, table time, and movement music time. Come check us out. From Chad Steen, the Up Granite Youth Conference. He's the Lin-Wood Student Assistant Coordinator, and he's organizing a trip for up to 12 students for the upcoming conference being presented by the North Country Health Consortium. The UP conference is focused on providing students substance abuse prevention awareness and alternative to use activities, as well as standard conference expectations, for example, social learning sessions. And then from the Wellness Committee, we met today and we were pleased to welcome 5 new members to the group. So today's attendance was 10 people. And now that I know who is it Jasmine, I think? Okay, now we will get the emails
Yay.
to be invited. And so we're planning a high school wellness hike in October, so stay tuned for info on that.
Thank you. Community, Patrick? No? Thank you. So I guess at this point, I will poll the board to go into non-public. Brian?
Yes.
Dan?
Yep.
Matt?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Jasmine?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Right.